secondary steel sector in this conference that the FICCI and the Ministry today have sponsored. I'm extremely grateful to you for having invited me to participate in the inaugural of this conference. I understand that the inaugural will be followed by 2 technical sessions in which the entrepreneurs and industrialists involved in the secondary steel sector and the government would be interacting with each other. It's extremely important that in this present environment that this be done, because it's extremely necessary both for your sectors, for your industry, and also in the larger interest of the Indian economy, that steel is one sector which needs to be strengthened, preserved, and preserved for a further growth. If India aspires to grow at a rapid pace over the next 2 to 3 decades, it's almost certain that the consumption of steel is going to increase. Steel is integrated with the quality of life. And as societies become more and more affluent, more people start living in regular houses instead of Kacha village homes, the country develops a better infrastructure, the country's manufacturing sector grows, the country's auto sector grows. Now, each one of them is integrally integrated to steel. And therefore, it's not rocket science for anybody to presume that over the next 20, 30 years, consumption of steel in India is going to increase. But the fact that the consumption of steel in India is going to increase also entails that the challenges and crises at times which the industry faces have to be understood and the appropriate solutions found to them. The world today is passing through some very challenging trends. For us in India, these challenges are created by external factors. When they are created by external factors, it could be the uncertainty which the prospect of a rate hike by the US Fed. When will it happen? That creates an uncertainty one day. And the US is a big economy. Anything that happens there has a global impact. China is another major global economy today. So if their manufacturing data throws up an adverse indication because a global slowdown is going to impact on them, that itself has an impact and it shakes the global markets. What happens in a much smaller economy like Greece can also have its own adverse impacts. But then these are only transient trends. If economies try and exist on their own solid foundations and their own fundamentals are strong, then for them to withstand these transient trends is not a very challenging task. And our approach in India today certainly is that our own fundamentals must become stronger and stronger, so that our ability in a globally integrated economy to withstand these challenging trends, which I said I do believe are transient, immensely increases. We then acquire a certain kind of immunity that beyond a few days we are able to withstand those trends. And therefore, what is our own growth potential? What are our own inflation figures? What are our own revenue collections? What are our own foreign exchange reserves? At what pace is our own capital investment in infrastructure increasing? What is the prospect of our services, our agriculture this year? What are the consumption patterns likely? Now, these all are indicating positive gestures. And I have no doubt that our ability to withstand these transient global trends created predominantly by external factors is very strong. And if there is one industry which is also impacted by external factors today, it is steel. We have a great sense of satisfaction that we become the third largest producer of steel in the world. We are also now aspiring to slowly become the second largest producer of steel. We are conscious of the fact that we have not realized our full potential in steel consumption, and therefore from the present levels we are going to increase at least threefold if we are to reach even the global averages. These are positive indications. But then if on the other hand we see today, at least in the current phase, China has a huge excess capacity, and that huge excess capacity has also a certain amount of price competitiveness, and therefore their ability to flood markets across the world is there. Some economies have interpreted this flooding of other markets as dumping. As a result of which, our sectors, both the primary and the secondary, at times are feeling stressed. In fact, the direct result of this is that the largest single NPAs with the banks, as a result of this problem, belong to the steel sector. And this can have a spiral impact. So the industry gets impacted by this external factor. The banks get impacted by the health of the industry. The ability of the banks to lend elsewhere gets impacted. And therefore, there is a larger problem in store. And then one has to then go and address the root cause. Because band-aid solutions to deal with such problems don't work. You have to address the root cause. And the root cause is that you have to take into account various factors and make our own domestic industry competitive. And when you become competitive, the external factors' ability to adversely impact you also gets reduced. And I think the Steel Ministry has been more than active in consultation with the Commerce Ministry, with the Finance Ministry, in trying to find out solutions, because this is a matter of concern. It not only impacts you, it impacts the larger economy. And therefore, your problems are also complex. On one hand, you have a challenge that if you have too much excess of protectionism as a defensive policy, it can have a spiral impact on user industries. So policy makers will have to do a balancing act. But then in the balancing act, as far as secondary industry is concerned, the challenge of one, your raw material being available to you at globally competitive prices. And I would certainly urge the Ministry of Steel and Mines, which has taken a landmark initiative in amending the law, that it's better that sooner than later our mining capacities are also expanded so that availability of excessive raw material itself will ensure that market forces bring down the raw material prices. There is no other way of reducing raw material prices than making our resource available to the people to the extent that they need it. And market forces are capable of ensuring the reduction of that prices. And now that we have a legal framework which is fair in play, the earlier it is done, the better it is. Other cost inputs, whether it is taxes, whether it is freight, power fortunately is today in most parts of the country available in excess. But then some areas may face the rates issue. I think it is here that you have also to enable your own self for cost competitiveness. In the eventual race, hand-holding can take place up to a point. Beyond that point, one has to stand up on its own strength and run the industry on your own strength. The governments have to create that enabling and friendly environment in which there is no adversity. And I'm quite certain that the interaction that you will have today, some of the obvious answers to these questions plus some other issues will come up. You have a very competent minister. I always, he represents that famous English phrase of still water running deep. He's very calm and quiet, but has a great depth in listening and understanding the problems. The Secretary, of course, has been extremely concerned with putting the steel industry back on track. And I'm sure the interaction today will provide some answers. And the government being concerned, other departments of the government, whether it's the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Commerce, which are the two direct departments which deal with you other than the Steel Ministry, will obviously be responding to the suggestions that you make today. We are as concerned with the industry because of the employment potential, because of the steel requirement pressure issue, because of the pricing issue, and certainly the current crisis of steel, the impact it is having on other sectors of the economy, and therefore that crisis itself has to be resolved sooner than later. Thank you very much, and I am sure you will have a great interaction.
स्टील उत्पादकों के सम्मेलन को संबोधित कर रहे थे वित्त मंत्री